Have you ever had a fear that was so deep it felt like it was running your life? Well, imagine that fear belonged to a U.S. Supreme Court justice, a man named William O. Douglas. This is his incredible true story. How a terrifying moment in a pool almost broke him, and how he fought back, step by step, to reclaim his life.
Now, Douglas wasn't just some random guy. He was actually a friend and advisor to President Roosevelt. So when FDR said these famous words, Douglas knew exactly what he meant. He didn't just hear the quote, he lived it. His story is living proof that the real monster isn't the water or the dark. It's the fear itself.
So, where did this all begin? You might think it started with the big, dramatic incident that almost killed him. But nope. To really understand the enemy he was up against, we have to go way back to one of his earliest childhood memories. It all starts when he's just a little kid, maybe 3 or 4 years old. A wave at the beach just completely knocks him over, buries him in water, and he can't breathe. His father, just laughed it off. But for little Douglas, a deep, primal terror was planted in his heart. So years later, when he's about 10, he makes a really brave choice. He's going to face that fear and learn to swim in the nice, safe YMCA pool. And he was actually starting to get the hang of it. He was just beginning to feel a little more comfortable, to put that old memory behind him. But then one random, thoughtless act by another kid was about to turn this safe space into an absolute nightmare. He called it, simply, the misadventure. So there he is, just sitting by the side of the pool, all alone. In walks this big bruiser of a boy, maybe 18 years old. The kid just yells, "Hi, Skinny, how'd you like to be ducked?" And before Douglas can even react, the boy picks him up and just chucks him into the 9-foot deep end. Just like that. As he's sinking, his brain is still firing on all cylinders. I mean, he was terrified, but as he put it, he was not yet frightened out of his wits. He comes up with a perfectly logical plan. He'll hit the bottom, push off with all his might, pop up to the surface like a cork, and paddle to the edge. Solid plan, right? Well, reality had something else in store. That 9-foot drop felt like 90. When he finally hit the bottom and jumped, it wasn't some powerful launch. He came up so slowly. And when he opened his eyes, all he saw was that gross, dirty yellow water. That's when the real panic started to kick in. He was suffocating, trying to grab for air, but his mouth was still under the surface. Down he went again, and his lungs were just screaming. He tried to stick to his plan, but his body was just giving up. He said his legs felt like dead weights, totally paralyzed and stiff. He jumped with every single ounce of energy he had left, but it did nothing. The water just held him there. And this is the moment everything flips. It wasn't just fear anymore. He called it sheer, stark terror, the kind of primal dread that you can't reason with, that you have absolutely no control over. He was literally shrieking underwater, but of course no one could hear him. The only thing he could feel was the pounding in his head, a sign that he was somehow still alive. He tried to come up a third time, but it was no use. And then a really strange thing happened. All that effort just stopped. The terror vanished. He felt this calm, this peaceful, drowsy feeling, like he was floating in his mother's arms. He just relaxed, let go, and everything went black. The curtain of life fell. Okay, so obviously he was rescued. The kid who threw him in later said he was only fooling. But for Douglas, this was so much more than just a close call. The physical part was over, sure, but a deep, psychological haunting was just beginning. The real battle was only just getting started. He called it a handicap, and it stayed with him for years and years. Anytime he got near water, it didn't matter if he was canoeing, fishing, whatever, that memory would just poison the whole experience. His legs would feel paralyzed all over again. He said an icy horror would grab his heart. It just stole all the simple joys from his life. And this wasn't just some local thing, This fear became his shadow. It followed him everywhere he went. Fishing trips in Oregon, lakes up in Maine and New Hampshire. It didn't matter where he was in the country, that terror was always right there with him.
So for years, he was basically a prisoner to this phobia. He tried to fight it, but it just had this iron grip on him. But then, one day, he just hit a breaking point. He decided, that's it. I am not going to let this terror run my life anymore. I'm going to fight back.
So he made a decision that sounds simple, but was actually monumental. He wasn't going to avoid water anymore. He was going to master it. He went back to a swimming pool, and he hired a professional to teach him, step by agonizing step, how to swim again.
And the instructor he found was, frankly, a genius. He totally got that this wasn't just about learning the breaststroke. This was a psychological war. He had to completely deconstruct the act of swimming and all the terror that came with it, and then build it all back up from scratch. The instructor's method was just so smart and systematic. First, he put Douglas on a rope and pulley system, so he felt safe just going back and forth across the pool, for weeks. Then it was all about breathing. Hundreds of times, face in the water to exhale, raise it to inhale. Then he spent weeks just kicking against the side of the pool, literally reteaching his legs to listen to him. Only after all that did they start putting the pieces together. Piece by piece, he built a swimmer.
And let me tell you, this was not a quick fix. It took 3 full months of this exhausting, repetitive work before, as he said, the tension began to slack. 3 months just to start to feel a little bit of the panic go away. That just shows you the size of the mountain he was trying to climb here.
So, the instructor's job was done. Douglas could swim. But he knew he wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. He knew the only way to truly, finally kill this fear was to face it alone, head on, when there was no one around to save him. The final test had to be his, and his alone.
And this right here shows the crucial shift in his whole mindset. When those little bits of the old terror came back, he didn't run. He turned around and faced it. He literally started talking back to his fear, taunting it, challenging it, trying to scare me, eh? Look. That's how he finally took back control.
And he didn't just test himself once. He set up this series of challenges, each one bigger than the last. First, swimming the pool, alone. Check. Then he went and swam 2 miles across the lake in New Hampshire. Check. And for the final boss battle, he went high into the mountains to swim in a place called Warm Lake, proving to himself beyond any shadow of a doubt that the terror was gone for good. Through this whole crazy ordeal, he learned something really profound. He'd experienced both the feeling of dying and the terror that comes from fearing it. And what he realized was, in death itself, there's a kind of peace. The real enemy, the only thing that's actually terrifying, is the fear of death. And because he had stared that fear in the face and won, his will to live was stronger than ever before.
In the end, this victory wasn't just about being able to swim. It was about getting his life back. It was about finally feeling